I can't continue to do it. I can't call this a fake win. They have 4 wins on the season. They're now 1 away from last year's win total. I'm not going to sit here and call it a fake win. Like I did against the Falcons. Like I did over the past 2 weeks to an extent with the Dolphins and Cowboys. Where the Cowboys and Dolphins didn't show up on defense. The Falcons didn't show up on offense. Throwing swing passes to Bijan Robinson is the extent of the Falcons offense in the Panthers Week 3 win. But now you have 4 wins. And I think my hypothesis now is what happens when you manage the game. What happens when you do right longer. That's the mantra of the Carolina Panthers. Do right longer. That's what Canales says. Do right longer. Because you know a lot of these teams, I think coming into the season, they had the 7th easiest schedule in football. The Panthers did. And they knew, or at least they know now, that if you just go in and do right longer, don't turn the ball over, don't play like Justin Fields, don't play like Tyrod Taylor, you'll win these games. And you'll be in it. And you'll have a successful season, quote unquote. Successful. I think they could get 8 or 9 wins playing this way. Obviously, you're going to need more production from the offense, but that Jets defense is no joke. That Jets defense came to play. They looked good on defense. They looked awful on offense, but you did right longer. You didn't turn it over. They were in the game the whole freaking time. They were one chunk play away from getting a touchdown, and they almost had a touchdown a couple of times. The Jets, Tyrod Taylor missed on every single one of those deep throws. There was one down the sideline, Trevin Wallace in coverage. Wallace kind of just like sticks his hand up like a middle schooler asking a question in a science class. He's beat bad by like 10 yards. Tyrod Taylor throws the ball. It's underthrown. And Wallace, I don't even think he's looking at the ball. He just goes, teacher, I got a question. So what is the capital of North Dakota? And he gets his hand on the ball. Mike Jackson, he got beat. Even J.C. Horn, guys had a step on him. J.C. Horn said some of it was related to the coverage, so they were given help over the top with the safeties, and the Panthers corners were in the right place. But it looked like if Tyrod Taylor had better ball placement on some of those deep throws, particularly in the second half, there were plays to be made there. So that's why it's an ugly win, but score don't lie. They did make the plays. Like, granted, the ball's underthrown, but they did get a hand on the ball. I think they played well once the ball was there. Like, if you're with me, the ball skills. Like, J.C. Horn catching that with one hand. That interception, the first one, was amazing. I think Mike Jackson, underratedly so, had some pass breakups. Trevin Wallace, he stuck his hand up. Give credit where credit's due. I just think you did let them in the game, and maybe if they had some competent quarterback play, they actually make that a little bit more entertaining. And I don't know how sustainable it is moving forward, because you're probably not going to be playing Justin Fields again and Tyrod Taylor, who were 16 of 34 in the day with 172 yards and 2 picks. A just abysmal day, a bad day to be a New York Jets fan. One of those circumstances where you feel bad for the 0-7 coach. Like, I actually think Aaron Glenn has a job in the NFL waiting for him as a defensive coordinator. I think he is a good defensive coordinator. I think the Miami Dolphins would kill for a DC like Aaron Glenn. It's the quarterback play. The offensive line play. 15 sacks the Jets have allowed in the past 2 weeks. Unreal. Unreal. The Panthers capitalized on it, though. They capitalized on Justin Fields in the first half, looking like he didn't know the play. It was amazing. It was snapped to him. And the Jets were playing like it was a pass. There were 10 guys blocking like it's a pass. Fields is running with the ball. Now, I think he's a good guy, good character. I think he's someone who's been through a lot in his career, Justin Fields has. But oh my gosh, he was just not on the same page as anyone on Sunday. And you give the Panthers credit for capitalizing on it. A dub is a dub. And I feel if I keep doing the whole fake win thing, I'm going to probably digitalize and join the Matrix. Because it's like every single thing is going to be fake. They're going to be 9-8, and it's just going to be 9 fake wins. So I'm willing to bend the knee. I'm willing to unplug from the Matrix now before I pixelate and tell you it's all part of the doing right longer mantra. And this is what's going to happen. The wins are going to be ugly. But who cares if the wins are ugly when you continue to win? Here's Dave Canales on the win.
All right. First and foremost, got to give a lot of credit to the Jets. The way that they, gave us great challenges in our run game to try to find, positive yardage. And, they were an aggressive group. And the guys challenged us in every way you could think of, in the pass game, with the pressures, in the run game, all those things. So I got to just tip my hat to them. We're grinding out, trying to find solutions and find yards. And, Andy was able to come in there, get a critical third down for us. Xavier with the big day, just all the hard work paying off. And then, of course, just can't say enough about the defense coming away with, 6 sacks, a couple of interceptions there, and just really playing excellent football all the way through the game.
I'm going to talk a lot more about Bryce Young and Andy Dalton and the development there on tomorrow's program. Got to wait for what Canales has to say. It's probably going to come out soon, I would imagine. I'm not going to speculate. I know there's some theories online. For example, the X-ray, according to Joe Person, a reputable report, was negative. The X-ray on Bryce Young's ankle, negative. But I want to wait until we have more information on that to really dissect the quarterback situation going forward. What I do want to talk about is Canales shouts out the defense. It was all defense. And at first he says, Aaron Glenn, great defensive day. And I thought it was for the Jets. The pressure was timely. I think they knew what to do. They took T-Mac away. And they stopped the run. 3.5 yards per carry. I told you, they're not going to let you run all over them. And you could try to do it. Aaron Glenn is a defensive coach, defensive coordinator. There is a pride thing. You're not going to be able to get away with running the ball as effectively as you did against Brian Schottenheimer and Mike McDaniel, who could care less about defense. They came away with the win. Why they won? Well, I think it's the 2 best players you have on defense. J.C. Horn with a case to become Defensive Player of the Year. Probably is going to get Defensive Player of the Week. I'm not as familiar with other performances across the league, but an amazing performance from J.C. Horn. The closer, like Mariano Rivera, closing that thing out in the second half with 2 huge interceptions. Derek Brown, 2 sacks for the second time in his career in a game. And Derek Brown, I think, for me, almost impressed more than J.C. Horn. Because I'm watching Derek Brown beat blockers, beat double teams, and then he's, in the first half, running after Justin Fields. And it was actually amazing to watch Derek Brown in a foot race against the Jets quarterback. Like, why is Derek Brown even able to keep up with Justin Fields? And you see why Brown believes he should be on the field for all pass rush opportunities. Because he is able to keep up with the speedy Justin Fields. And I was almost more impressed by that than I was some of the other things going on in this Panthers victory over New York. But I do want to say this too. J.C. Horn was completely dynamite. I think it saved you a potential touchdown opportunity. Yes, the ball was underthrown on that first J.C. Horn interception, but to have a guy who can close it out like that, to be able to make plays and win on defense, this is not something the Panthers were able to do last season. It's a new development. It's a new thing. And you're probably not going to be able to do that against the Bills or the Packers. You can do it against the Saints. You can do it against the Falcons. You can do it against some of these other teams on the schedule. And developmentally going forward, you should be very comfortable with the core you have. And between Brown and Horn, you have two elite defensive players that other teams will have to draft for years and years and years to find someone who compares to the two Panthers stars. Complete momentum shifters. They make winning plays. You're winning on defense. You won this game on defense. Canales gets that. The Panthers understand that. The heroic play on the defensive side of the ball by your superheroes, by not the sidekicks, because we're going to go into some of the other players on the Panthers defense, but the top of your defense, your two first-round picks from a couple of years ago, making plays, setting the Panthers apart from the competition. Here's J.C. Horn on why he believes the Panthers won and who was key to the Panthers' success.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, losing a playmaker like Pat. You see the game he had last week, and then just, losing him and, having to put two young guys in there with Princely and Nick. But they stepped up. They both stepped up today. I think Nick had his first career sack. So proud of them for stepping up to the plate, and they talented. And, last year was tough, but, this year, like I said, it's the 2025 Panthers. You can't worry about last year, and we just going to, keep trying to stay together. Like I said, people going to say what they want to say. We just got to stay together and worry about getting better every day.
We'll see what happens with the quarterback and the situation with Bryce Young, whether or not he's healthy moving forward. I want to talk about this, which I think is the most important story from this game. Again, we have to wait on and see what happens with the quarterback. But for me, this was a pivotal stepping stone in the Panthers season because you got production from Princely McMillan. Specifically, Dave Canales calling out Princely McMillan a number of times in his postgame press conference. A number of times calling out McMillan, Nick Scorton, another guy who stepped up on the day. And I know this is a Jets offensive line that just gave up 9 sacks to the Broncos. 9. But you did get 6 sacks. You created pressure. You got after the quarterback. You can make some caveats to it. You can say, well, the Jets were throwing the ball deep downfield all day. They were willing to sit and wait in the pocket. That was part of the game plan. Still, they executed. And this is something you're going to need to be able to do against the Bills and Packers if you want to win. And in fact, you're going to need to be able to do this in general. You're going to need a pass rush. You can't win from just stopping the run and running the ball alone. There's 2 things the Panthers needed to develop today. One was the pass rush. Can you get pressure on the quarterback without Pat Jones? Can you, McMillan and Nick Scorton, take that next step? Can they continue to grow? Because they've grown all season, but now can they grow at a precipitous rate? Can they exponentially get better? Because you need them. You need someone who's a true threat as a pass rusher at the edge position. We can't continue to rely on rotational players in the big picture. Situational players. You can't rely on them in the big picture. You need a game wrecker. A guy who is consistently able to get pressure. And I'm not saying McMillan and Nick Scorton are there yet, but they're on their way to doing that. And even though the Jets game in many ways was junior varsity, bad Jets offensive line, bad Jets offense, quarterback can't hit throws, line can't block, the play calling is really questionable. I got their approach going into the game, but didn't make the adjustments where they lost me. The second half game plan I don't think was great for the Jets. I think they could have taken advantage of a lot more underneath. I think there were plays to be had. Instead, they're throwing the ball, chucking it 50 yards down the field. So, questionable. Not that the plays weren't there. I think the Jets wide receivers had the Panthers corners beat. They probably could have made a couple of throws there. It's just Tyrod Taylor was underthrowing the ball every single time. But needless to say, I want to talk about this in the context of stepping stones for Panthers personnel. Building on this, building something for the future. How about Xavier Legette? How about Xavier Legette with a game that probably is making a lot of people question their decision to give up and write off the Panthers wide receiver, myself included, and I am guilty of making the Jonathan Mingo comparison. I've done it multiple times. I did it as early as the offseason. I was talking about this in OTAs. And I want to say two things about Legette. One, I think he's really humbled himself. I think he's matured a lot. And I say that, it's a pretty funny reason to say this, but I say that because the horse celebration is not even there. You know when you go through like a breakup or something and you go, I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to start going to the gym. I'm going to start eating right. I'm going to open the Bible. Whatever. We've all been there. For Xavier Legette, that is what I think the offseason was for him. He's in the spotlight, Guy Fieri, Glorilla, camera in front of me, make money. And we're all just watching it like, dude, be Justin Jefferson on the field before you're Justin Jefferson off the field, before you get a Fortnite character. Be Justin Jefferson on the field. And I think he has realized that putting himself in the spotlight like that has not been good. And the national attention that he drew is now backfiring. And even though we know we're close to the situation, we saw Xavier Legette working. The coach even called him an overworker. Dave Canales called Legette an overworker. And we've read into that. But finally today, I think it was, you know what? I've put my head down. I've gotten the paparazzi away. They've cleared out. They've gone and started talking about whatever they're talking about. And you finally saw the hard work come through. And I think the number one play for me was the touchdown. Because I've talked about it all season, and it's been true. Bryce Young has not had a rapport with the wide receiver. There was a couple of plays, week one, the one that stands out is your 2-on-1, Devin Lloyd versus Young and Legette. And Legette is wide open, but he's not looking for the ball. Should have had a touchdown, not on the same page as the quarterback. The number of throwaways Bryce Young has had. Bryce Young throwing the ball in the dirt instead of trying to let Xavier Legette make a play. Bryce Young has thrown a number of interceptions when targeting Legette. And today, the Jets were really smart. They said, you know what? We know Legette and Young. Legette and Dalton. It's the guy that they avoid. It's the awkward cousin at the dinner party. We know we should put the spotlight on him. And what do the Panthers do? Well, they can't throw to T-Mac. Sauce Gardner is shadowing him. Legette is the guy they have to throw the ball to, and Legette steps up. Xavier Legette steps up. You know who wouldn't step up? Jonathan Mingo. You know who wouldn't step up? Terrace Marshall Jr. He is rewriting the history. He is rewriting the history. And on 11 targets, Legette gets 92 yards and a touchdown. A nice off-platform throw by Young to find Legette in the end zone for that touchdown. Do not write this man off. And I had, and again, much like with the pass rush, I'm not as skeptical with Legette, but I do say, let's see him do it over the long term. Let's see how this develops. Needless to say, two guys stepped up, two units rather, between the pass rush and Xavier Legette. And that is important in the grand scheme of things. It wasn't Coker today. It was Xavier Legette. Finally, let's talk about the quarterback. Here is Dave Canales on the performance of Bryce Young today.
He was doing excellent. Throwing in rhythm, manufacturing, making sure we're getting to the right runs based on the looks and all those things. He's been just continuing to build off of that, just feeling confident about our process and being able to push our football forward. So he's been doing a great job.
I'm not going to lie. I was getting ready to rip the quarterback. I was. Up until the start of the first half into the second half, I had taken all these notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes, 5 missed opportunities from the quarterback, specifically on 2 touchdowns. The first drive, there was a play to be had. Legette and Coker. Maybe Coker ran the wrong route. There's two guys converging in the end zone. The two Panthers wide receivers converge in the end zone. But the ball was underthrown. Young could have thrown it up to Legette, let him go and high point the ball. The second on the Jatavian Sanders. This is the scoring drive, the field goal drive of the second half. There was a bad throw. It might have been tipped, but Sanders was wide open for a touchdown. And then it's funny, the camera pans in after the commercial break and it shows Young going up to Sanders going, sorry, dude, my bad throw. And I was going to say, maybe, to me, this game should have been about Young taking advantage of a good Jet secondary and taking the next step in his ability to throw the ball down the field. And the 5 opportunities that were there, these are just the ones that I saw, qualitative eye test analysis. He was unable to hit on those throws. Another one, that Jimmy Horn, he's wide open. Jimmy Horn on a wheel route. Young tries to throw it high. Jimmy Horn can't get high enough. A good wide receiver would have caught it. McMillan would have caught it. Legette would have caught it. But Jimmy Horn's 5'8"? And if he had just thrown the ball and let Horn come back to it, you're probably talking about a 30-yard play at the least. Maybe with Jimmy Horn's speed. I don't remember where the safety was on that play. But maybe with Jimmy Horn's speed, you're able to actually take that for a touchdown. But I do want to say the pastures aren't always greener. And by no stretch of the imagination did Andy Dalton have a great day. In 4 series after Young exited, Dalton had 77 yards, 4 first downs, and 3 punts. Did not score. I think the throw down the sideline to Legette that sealed it was pretty dynamite by Dalton. But in Canales' comments there, in his post-game press conference, I find one thing very interesting. When Canales says, the pre-snap operation and getting us into the right runs, that is what Canales says about Young. That is something that I don't think has been talked about enough, which is how the Panthers have changed the offense, the different types of blocks, the wham blocks, the pre-snap motions and all that. We get that. But Young's role in it, Young's development at the line of scrimmage, I think is an underrated storyline, doesn't get a lot of coverage. And Canales is telling you there, hey, hat tip to Young. He pushed the ball down the field. He's able to get us into the right types of situations, move the ball. Yes, a lot of this is more about doing right longer, managing the game. You haven't been able to really hit on the big play all season, and you didn't today. But in terms of Young's ability to get us into the right play and make the right read at the line of scrimmage, he's doing well with that. And I think it's one of those grass isn't always greener moments for me, where this is the realization that maybe Young does have a future here. And maybe Young, there's evidence that this is something where he has an ability that another quarterback might not have. And certainly Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor on the other side weren't able to do it. And I'm not saying that Young had a great game by any stretch of the imagination. But maybe some of that pre-snap stuff, it did get fixed. Maybe that cerebral IQ element of Young's game, it didn't dissipate. There is something to be said there. And it's a skill set that Canales is able to get out of his young quarterback. We'll see how this shapes up with the injury. I just wanted to talk about that specifically because that is something Young was not able to do early in the season. It's clearly an evolution, a development in the Panthers quarterback. We'll see his ability to throw the ball down the field because I think you look at any good offense in the NFL, they're able to get plays downfield. They're able to push the ball down the field and get chunk plays. Explosives. They're able to get those. The Panthers can't really get those outside of the run game. And the opportunities that Young had, he was unable to take advantage of. And for that reason, 2 of those plays resulted in field goals instead of touchdowns. And they left a lot of yards on the table. Drake May, Matt Stafford, Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, they're able to take advantage of those plays and make those plays. And if you're talking about the 10-year vision at quarterback, you're going to need to be able to make those plays to win. You're going to need to be able to consistently get pressure to win. Those are non-negotiables in winning. Throwing the ball down the field, getting pressure. 2 things that the Panthers are going to need to be able to do. The pressure, a step in the right direction on Sunday. Throwing the ball down the field, it was an opportunity the Panthers did not take advantage of enough against the Jets, and they're going to need to be able to do it. No better time to do it than Sunday against the Bills. We'll see how the situation with Young unravels. More on that tomorrow. This is The Tone. Caffeinate yourself. I was going to shotgun one of these. Celsius. I was going to shotgun it on air. I was like, I've already had 1. But if I do 2 and a shotgun of that much caffeine, 200 milligrams to the dome, the Tone loves energy. I don't know how great that would be. It would be really good for the brand. It would be really good for the brand because I like to live fit. I like to energize, and that's why I choose Celsius. Completely unpaid support of the energy drink company. But this is The Tone. I am energized, and I hope you are too. Stay tuned for more.